Hey, tourpreneurs, it's Mitch Bach, and just a quick note before we begin today's episode. Tourpreneur is currently sponsored by Google. We're thankful for their support of our community, and we are offering with them a completely free course helping you unlock the power and potential of Google's Things to Do program, which is specifically helping tour operators add their tours to Google in new ways that gives you new exposure and more direct bookings. To learn more, go to tourpreneur.com/Google. And as always, show notes, more resources, links to our newsletter, our business coaching community, and so much more are available on tourpreneur.com. Now to the episode.
Today's episode is brought to you by Checkfront, the booking platform trusted by over 5,000 tour and activity operators around the world. You can start your own free 21-day trial over at checkfront.com.
Welcome to the Tourpreneur Podcast. Travel industry veteran Shane Whaley will take you on a journey with fellow tourpreneurs, sharing their tips, ideas, insights, and success stories to inspire you to make your tour business the best it can be. And now, here is your host, Shane Whaley.
Hello and welcome to episode 105 of the Tourpreneur Podcast. Today we bring you the story behind Travel Curious. We have a conversation with its founder, Alex Grant. And I've been really intrigued about Travel Curious for some time. They are very active on social media. I love that their tours are a little different. They're definitely immersive, such as the Mafia food tour with an ex-New York detective. They definitely create something a little different. And the way they work is also different in that they are creating the tours themselves. They work with over 900 plus tour guides that they actually handpick, and they build the tours themselves. So definitely not an off-the-shelf type of product. So I was curious to learn from Alex what makes a great tour guide. In his view, what makes a good immersive tour experience? How is he selling through the hotels? What's that relationship like? And a lot more. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode today with Alex Grant of Travel Curious. Welcome to Tourpreneur, Alex Grant of Travel Curious. How are you?
I am very good, Shane. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be on today.
Last time I saw you, you and I were a couple of beers in at an arrival event back in Orlando. Don't you miss those days?
I certainly do. I remember the last time we saw each other, we discovered that we both listened to the same podcast.
Yes.
Which was Cold War Conversations.
Correct. Good old
yes.
Ian Sanders. So that was fun. So we're here to talk about Travel Curious. I've been watching you from a distance. You've been having a lot of really good news out there of late in terms of your development as a company and partnerships you've set up. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with Travel Curious, what exactly do you do?
Well, Travel Curious is a platform for instantly bookable private tours and experiences in over 60 cities around the world. We actually act mainly B2B2C. So we actually enable large travel companies who are looking to kind of integrate or offer these immersive experiences in their customer journeys. And we specialize in helping them to do that in a very nice way.
Yeah, I think you're the first guest. So we're 100 and odd episodes in here that actually works on the B2B2C model. So I'm curious to look into that. When did you guys start up?
So we started off in 2018.
Right, so 2 years. And tell me, how did it come about? How did it all get started?
So there's a bit of a backstory in that I myself was, at one stage in my life, I was a tour guide in Rome. And that was an amazing experience. And I had been in finance. So it kind of was funny how I ended up doing that. But amazing experience. And that led me to a friend of mine to set up our own tour company in Rome. And that kind of led to another company, which was a company before Travel Curious called Curiosity. And that was very much focused on very bespoke tours and making customized tours online. And it was from there that I got a lot of learnings, and I got a huge amount of, let's just say, we did a lot of experiments, and we got some great aspects that we use for Travel Curious. And I actually met my two co-founders, Amir and Nadav, in 2018. and they had a background in hotels specifically. And we had done some great stuff with hotels in previously. And we just thought that, somebody has to do this well. It's so obvious that, hotels are sitting there with all these people coming in every day. And the hotels hadn't really managed to, integrate tours in a decent way so far. So we thought there has to be something here. So we got together and we formed Travel Curious. And we have been working very hard ever since. And we've now opened it up into various different parts of work with media companies, travel agents, and tour operators. So it's been a great journey. The last 2 years has been incredible how fast things have changed. So I guess that's kind of why you probably heard more about us recently, because we've been building up with some of the things that we've been working on.
Yeah. It's an interesting question with hotels and tours, because obviously I have an OTA background, and it would always, perplex me when I would book a hotel. Let's say I book a hotel in San Francisco, and they might send you an email if they're good and say, oh, here are things to do nearby, but they're all straight links to those attractions. I'm like, why on earth do they not have a partnership with Tours and Activities OTA where they can make a bit of commission out of that? And of course, I know you've got the whole concierge thing as well on the local level, but if I'm booking a month out and I get this email from or let's say I'm booking in London and I'm booking at the St. Ermin, who you work with, for instance, and they're like, oh, we've got this spy tour. There's a lot of history around intelligence in this hotel or this event or this food tour. Why do you think hotels have been so slow to catch on with offering tours online?
That's a great question, Shane. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this today who are like tour guides and tour operators are scratching their heads as well, because, you would think it would make sense. Now, having said that, some hotels do this very, very well. And when they do it well, it's excellent, not just in terms of revenue generator for them, but in terms of a customer experience and a storytelling experience for that hotel as well. So some do it very well, but I think we can all agree that most of them don't. And what it is, I feel certainly, is that hotels, they are incredibly good at what they do, which is the things that they do inside the building. If it's the accommodation, the bar, whatever it is, and they're very focused on that, and their skill set is around that. So whenever they're thinking of a tour and activity, it really is an afterthought for them. And sometimes they look at the numbers and they go, do you know what? Like, I'm not sure that this is going to turn the needle for us right now because I make so much in the rooms. But that's the wrong way to look at it, actually, because there are huge opportunities if you integrate it in the right way and offer it in the right way. And also the customer experience is huge. Like, when you go to a city, like, people do spend a lot of time in their hotel rooms, but they're actually spending a lot more time out in the city. The hotels should be helping them with their activities with which they're doing in the city.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know in January, I went on a cruise for the first time in the Caribbean. And despite being an OTA guy, I booked all my experiences through the cruise line. And it was like, you really got the red carpet treatment from those experience providers, because they can't afford anything to go wrong, because that's such a lucrative deal for these guys out on the islands that if they mess up and that cruise company passenger is annoyed and complain, they could lose that contract. So the experience, it was stellar. I have to say, I was really, really impressed. Even though it probably cost me more in the long run, the experience I got was phenomenal.
That's an interesting thing you brought up there, because the cruise companies have the opposite view of the hotels, okay? They will get you on the boat for whatever, and they'll make most of their money on the excursions. And I think if the hotels actually took a little bit of learning from there, it could be very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say there's a hotel listening right now and they're like intrigued by this and they want to work with Travel Curious. First of all, why should they work with you? So you're speaking to a hotel director now. What does Travel Curious offer for the hotel?
So we actually have quite a different approach for hotels, because we feel that if a hotel is going to offer this, properly, they have to see us as an extension of their brand. So that means that they have to trust the tour guide, the company, that they hand over the customer to them. They're going to take them out and have an amazing time. So, if hotel is going to work with a partner, they've got to trust that partner. So because we are an owner and operator of all of our tours, so we do have a lot of technology in the company. We have lots of different products that we use to distribute, and we use technology to kind of do the logistics in the back end. In essence, we are tour operators. We create the logistics, we write the content, we do the research, and then we kind of work with professional tour guides, and also we'll train them on the tours as well. So it's a very detailed approach that makes sure that it's a great experience. So the hotels really like that, first of all, and it's personalized. 98% of our tours currently are private. So, the tour guide can come and meet them in the lobby and take them out. And then there's an extra thing that we do, which started with St. Irman's, funnily enough, but we've now actually started to do this with Marriott across a number of hotels around the world. So we work with Marriott, the experiences team, Susan, who I'm sure you know, and Laura, and we work with them in some of their most storied hotels. And what we do is we actually say, if the hotel has amazing history, or if it's an amazingly historical area, we try and tell the story of the hotel, and we try and unlock this experience, right? And, so the St. Irman's Hotel, for example, has the most amazing spy history. I know you love your spy stuff, so you've probably been there as a result of this. But it's mind-blowing. Like when we first met the GM, he actually just gave me a book. I have it up there. It's called House of Spies. It's the book about St. Irman's. And he said, I like your tours. They're brilliant. They're a great fit for us. We're going to offer them, and we're going to integrate them across our flow. But would you ever think of doing a tour for us, bespoke tour? So we went off and created this tour, and it ends with a cocktail. So it actually it starts in the hotel, the history. It goes out in the streets, it goes up to MI5. It comes back down, and you end up going in and having a cocktail in the Caxton bar, where Ian Fleming used to sit there and have a beer when he was off in the evening, and he used to write some chapters of James Bond. The Cambridge spies used to meet their handlers in there. Like, I'm just touching here on some of the stuff. I'm sure you know it already. But, that's a great story, right? And when you package it into an experience, which also has a cocktail in the bar, there's lots of elements there which are very interesting to the hotel, and the customers love it. And we've now started to do that across a number of different hotels, and each one is phenomenally interesting.
Yeah. So St. Irman's, for instance, how are they then promoting that tour and experience to their guests?
St. Irman's, so we have our own widget, which it's about 10 lines of code that's in the branding of the hotel. So they can just put that onto their site. And the booking takes place on their site, never leaves. No leaving to a white label, whatever it is. So it feels like it's part of the hotel. So it's on there, and they will put it in their pre-stay emails, confirmation emails. So they've done it everywhere, and they're very good with social. And we also have a concierge product as well. So we try and hit all the different points that's possible to sell these tours.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to get Brian Gray on the show, who runs the Intelligence Trail there in London, because he was the guy who took me to St. Irman's. We had a full day 3 years ago now. That was a fun event. So the customer hits their site, they make the booking, they have that experience, or the hotel is promoting that. So let me ask you on the other side. So this is really important for you as a business. So there's this interest in a spy tour, and I want to use this as an example. I think it's a great one. How do you then go about sourcing an excellent tour guide who can put that itinerary together and lead that tour for you?
Yeah. So what we do, we have this approach, which we started a few years ago to try and make this a scalable business. We had to have a way to have it free sale. So customer comes, they can book, and it's not on request. It's instantly bookable. So what we do is, we will create that tour. So we have an in-house researcher, full-term in-house researcher, and then we also have external people that we use, and we'll get them to, research this topic and come up with a theme. We will then work with a local tour guides to do the logistics. If it's involving a drink, you have to bring that element in as well. So there's lots of different components of a tour. And then we will actually create all this documentation. We'll have pages of notes. And then we will actually invite the guides in our system who wants to learn about this tour. Some of them might already be familiar with the history. Some of them might not. And we will literally have a training day with them on that and all the logistics. And we try and have maybe 10 to 15 for one of those hotel ones, because what happens then when it gets booked, the tech just sends it straight out to those 10 guides. And then 2 or 3 might say, yes, I can do that tomorrow or the next day. And then the system will just choose which one it is. Or we will manually choose which one it is because we understand this is actually a family. So we're going to go for that guide because you're very good with kids. So we have data on both sides that we can use to match the guys perfectly. And that's kind of the direction that we want to bring this. Is we want to be able to match the tour guide with the customer. And, having been a tour guide myself, I know how important it is to have a good match there because it can really make the experience, completely memorable if the tour guide can connect with the guests.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your process for vetting tour guides? Because there's lots of tour guides out there. And I ask you this question because a lot of our listeners are hiring tour guides, and it's one of the bigger challenges that I hear about. What's the Travel Curious vetting process?
First of all, we work with professional tour guides. So some cities don't have it, but still they'll have professional guides who are working day in, day out as tour guides. We tend not to work with part-time guides because a lot of our clientele, we are working under their brand. There has to be a professionalism element in there. So straight away, you're working with the guilds, you're working with anyone who has a accredited license in that city. We attract them by having events. Like we used to go around Europe and have events. I think we were one of the first companies that went around and had events in hotels and kind of met the tour guides, told them what we were trying to do, told them what we were, the proposition, and they all loved that. And then we have a kind of an internal framework that we kind of use to decide, is this tour guide going to be a good fit for us and for the clientele? And it's quite systematic how you get to that decision because we've created this framework. And then obviously you have the professionalism built in with the license. So that's a very good filter as well. And then you monitor. Obviously you have to monitor because tour guides are going to join. And then after a few tours, you really get the best feedback. And that's where you get the best data points on a tour guide because you can really find out what they're very good at and how people reacted to them. And the tour guides love the feedback, by the way. So they love hearing about what people thought of them, in reviews, but we can go a bit more granular as well. So it works extremely well.
So here's a tricky question for you, right? Out of all the tours that you currently offer, what is your favorite? So it doesn't have to be one that you've gone on, but one that you look at and think, yeah, that's the one I would pick. If I could travel today, which please, can we start traveling soon? What would you pick?
Yeah, that is a tricky one because there's 2 or 3 which I absolutely love, and I kind of that's very nice of you because looking at your daily email, which I open straight away every day, I'm always seeing really interesting tours popping up there. That I'm going I've got to go on that. I've got to go on that. I almost think you need to have some sort of a hot list that I can just save it for later from your email, but from the tours that we have created with the hotels, having some of them as interesting tours we've done because they're new, there's such new content. So we did one, which is a Spies and Scandals tour in the Mayflower Hotel in Washington. That is a phenomenal tour. You end up in the bar having a cocktail where J. Edgar Hoover had lunch every day for 30 years. And that hotel has got incredible scandals history as well. And that's where the inaugural ball used to be held beside the White House. And you also go to the White House. So that's a brilliant one we launched last year at Marriott. It's been very successful. Just another one, which is, we are very good at the cultural, historical tours. We're now getting into food tours, but we're doing it with a partnership, which is very interesting. We also love just very authentic things. And one of our guides is a former detective, and he has a mafia tour in Little Italy, and he mixes it in with a food as well. And he was born in the area, and I actually did that tour in January, and just mind-blowing experience. Hearing this guy's life and the way he was able to talk to the people and relate to the people as well. And and with a critical eye, I just thought he was a showman, but it was also very authentic. You felt as if you were there with him as a little kid, and he was in the same street as Robert De Niro. It was just incredible. I would advise anybody to take that tour if they're ever in New York.
Brilliant. Sounds very, very intriguing. And I know we'll talk about COVID in a moment, but you were doing some of these virtually during lockdown, weren't you?
Yeah, we did actually. And that was the first one we did, was with our detective. So yeah, the idea there was obvious. we wanted to try and work with our guides and try and help them to get some revenue. And also, like, it was a great way for us to engage with our guides. Like, we actually don't see our guides enough because it's all done by the platform a lot of the time. And everyone's quite busy all the time. It was great to actually connect with our guides again. And the virtual tours were a great success. And we're now expanding the virtual tours where hotels are going to be able to offer virtual tours of their hotels in the area as well, to try and reignite a bit of interest as we come out of like this tricky period that we've all had.
So you're promoting your tours through partners. We talked about hotels. You mentioned media. Can you give us examples of some media organizations that you're working with?
Yes, so we have collaborated in the past with Time Out. So we did Time Out experiences last year in London. We've also worked with the Sunday Times, and that was a different relationship with the Sunday Times because they actually want multi-day immersive experiences for their readers. And actually, one of the ones we did last year, once again, it was actually around spies. Funnily enough, we did one of them to Berlin for 3 days, and it was a mixture of our guides, and also they sent out Ben McIntyre, and Ben McIntyre, spoke one evening. That's also something that we like to do, whereby we can create a multi-day immersive experience as well for our partners.
So for our listeners, just so you guys know, Ben McIntyre is the gold standard when it comes to spy history writing. So that's a big coup. Like, that's the kind of thing that I'm sat here in the United States. Had I been around at the time or known about it, I would have been like, oh, can I afford to go on that? Can I take the time off because you had McIntyre involved? That's a big draw.
It was an amazing experience for him to come along and to talk as well. And I think that this is something that media companies are going to start doing more and more. Like, the experiences, the industry that we're in, there's a lot more guys coming into it, and the media guys are coming into it in a big way, and they want to make some of their content bookable, and they want to create stuff off the back of some of their content. So I think this is something that we're going to see again and again, and we're seeing it already with New York Times and other media companies trying to get in. And well, they're not trying to get in, they're actually in at the moment.
I mean, the Arrival research backs this up, and we know it because we work in this industry. But, there's not much more than just going on a walking tour of Berlin when you've got that insider experience and, behind the scenes. And you get someone like McIntyre showing you around the spy sites of Berlin and Cold War sites. I mean, that is the sizzle right there. In terms of your tours, so are you only selling through other businesses, or are you selling them through OTAs? Any other channels that you sell and promote your tours through?
So we have an API. So we have an API that we sell into tour operators. We also have an agent login. So we work with travel agents that have their own login, and they can do the bookings in their own environment and also package it up themselves. We basically built all the tools that you need to build to be able to interact with the travel industry. And also OTAs. So OTAs was one of the ones that, I had shied away from OTAs over the years because we're private tours, and we focus an awful lot on the experience being magical. So the idea is that you have to have a brilliant guide, you have to have all the tickets included and the transport included, because the last thing we wanted was for customers to have to pull out money halfway through the tour, or they are like, suddenly there was a cost they didn't realize. And it just felt like sometimes whenever you're putting that on an OTA, the value doesn't get shown, and the price can look high. So we had kind of like veered away. But in the last year, we've actually decided that, why not? Like the OTAs are a phenomenal partner. A lot of people get a lot of business out of them. And we're now going into all the OTAs, and we're leveraging some of the tools out there to kind of help do that at the moment.
You also mentioned earlier that you have a concierge service. How does that work?
So we have this custom tour builder product as well, which the travel agents use an awful lot, whereby if a customer can't find what they want, they can literally make a request and build their own tour. And then the technology does a lot of the early work of kind of matching you to the best experience, but then they can actually in real time customize that with one of our concierges. So on the fly, you could basically create your own spy tour in Berlin for the day, but you could also maybe go to Potsdam. You could also have a bit of food tour, or you could do in London, you could do a Royal in the morning, in the afternoon, you might want to do food. And so you can customize all this on the site. And it's a fantastic niche for a certain clientele that want to have something very bespoke.
Yeah, I mean, we organized a meetup for our East German history podcast in November in Berlin, and it was great, but it was kind of DIY bolt-on stuff, and it worked. It was good. But next year we were talking about doing a week-long multi-day trip to the former East Germany and getting out of Berlin and going to other places. So a service like that, because it's a lot, it's a lot of work. Now, whether our members will have the cash to pay for it, because like you said, it comes at a premium price, is something else, of course. But if we...
Shane, we're working on it already for you.
There we go. Brilliant stuff. Fantastic.
Take a day off from answering emails, telling your team what to get ready, or manually entering info across sales channels. Actually, take many, because Checkfront will help manage your bookings. Guests book and pay however they want. Your team has the tools they need to operate smoothly, and your calendar always stays up to date. Now, what will you do with all that extra time? Checkfront. One booking platform, limitless possibilities. Find out more at checkfront.com.
You mentioned earlier on about some news around food tours.
Yeah, so we are trying to create like product all over the world, and as I mentioned earlier on, we own and operate the products, and to do that at scale, we can do it where we're very good at the history, the culture, and other things. But when it comes to food, we all know that food is a very specific genre of product, and it's about relationships. There's a lot of logistics in there. So instead of trying that ourselves, we are actually partnering up in a strategic relationship with Eating Europe Tours.
Yep.
Which is actually, they were the pioneers of the food.
Kenny, right?
Kenny, yeah. So Kenny was one of the pioneers in Europe. I can remember whenever I was living in Rome as a guide, and I was running our small company. Kenny came to me. He said, "I have an idea about doing a food tour," and I was like, "I've never heard of a food tour." And he said, "In America, they're quite big." And lo and behold, look at them now. So we're going to be working with them in terms of a very close relationship. Like, we'll be giving product to them and vice versa. But it allows us to be able to scale that by bringing in the experts as opposed to us trying to do everything.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. And Eating Europe are a great company. So let me ask you, you were setting up the business. Obviously, this all costs money. How are you funded? How did you go around seeking investment and getting started?
Yeah, so we self-funded for a little bit ourselves. So myself and Amir Nadav, my co-founders, and then we brought in some angel investors, specifically from the travel sector. And our chairman is actually a very active chairman, and he's also invested. And his background is actually Jack Travel, which you might know from the hotel side. So he's an expert in the B2B side of that. So we're using his expertise. So these guys invested early, and we actually just closed a seed round in the last quarter of last year, which was good timing because of what happened. So that was lucky.
I wouldn't call it luck. I'd call it a result of your hard work. It's these things don't happen just by accident.
Yeah, no, well, we're very thankful, and it's now moving to the next phase. That's how we're seeing it after a few months that we've just had.
Yeah. What advice would you have to any of our listeners out there who want to build a platform or technology or some kind of travel product, and they want to, recruit some investors? Anything that you would share in terms of advice?
Well, having experienced what some of the people listening will have done of just setting up a very small, setting up on your own to begin with. I can remember we set up in Rome, and our first website cost us $500, and it was a custom WordPress site that took bookings straight away. And that worked great for us back then. Obviously, if you're going to try and do a platform, you do need a bit of initial investment. And I just think the easiest thing to do is it's friends and family initially, because they're the people that you can convince. And if you can build a prototype with that, that's whenever you go to a more sophisticated investor. And when they see that you've got through the prototype and you know what you're doing, you have the passion, and you have some data, that's where I think you can actually go to investors properly. But initially, obviously, it's the friends and family that can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we have to talk about COVID. How has that affected you?
Yeah, so like everyone else in the sector, very quickly, our business, went to zero in about, it was probably 2 weeks. And, we were watching it very closely, obviously, from early January. But then when it all happened extremely quickly. But I feel that, everyone in our sector, we were the first people to get hit. I thought the way people reacted was incredible. How fast did companies come out with new business models or initiatives or projects is just phenomenal. I thought that was great. And so, we tried to do something very proactive. And I remember when we had a call one day, we were just throwing some ideas around. And I can remember reading Boccaccio. He was the Renaissance poet, and he wrote a book during the plague in Florence. When the plague was happening, everyone ran out to the hills outside Florence, and all these people, they were all staying in this kind of villa, kind of self-quarantining for like a month in this villa. And every day they told a story. And we were just thinking like, could we do a story a day from one of our tour guides? And then it just evolved into doing maybe a virtual tour. If they could do it from their room, or they could do it from out in the street on their half an hour of exercise. And, obviously we weren't the only people who had the idea. Everyone came out with something similar. But I thought it was amazing to see that. And as I said, there was a lot of positives for us in that time, because we've gone back and restructured a lot of the company. We have focused on lots of things that we needed to do. And sometimes the day-to-day thing can really, and I'm sure everyone who's listening to this would kind of agree with this, is that, the day-to-day grind, it sometimes does take you away from some of the longer term things that we need to do to achieve the success that we're looking for.
It's so true. I mean, talking to operators they're now SEO experts and WordPress experts, because finally having this time to sit down and work at these things, or we've all bought courses that we've not got around to doing online. And of course, we wish that we were reading courses, but now it's like, maybe I'll open that course I bought last year and get on with it. How are bookings looking for you now? So we're recording this towards the end of July. How are bookings looking for Travel Curious?
Yeah, so we're starting to get a trickle of bookings in certain areas. We actually focused our last kind of month on domestic US, because we have a lot of partners. We just signed with Preferred Hotels, and we just launched with them last week, and they're doing a big domestic campaign. So we're trying to bulk up our content and kind of operations there. And it's a bit slow, because the second wave's coming back in some of the states is kind of holding it back. And then in Europe, we're seeing a few bookings popping up. But I think end of the year is where it's the earliest that we can really see anything kind of genuine, or even next year, we feel.
I was going to ask you, what's the biggest challenge you've had to overcome with Travel Curious? Would you say I don't know if that's an academic question, because you think, well, COVID is the biggest challenge we've all had to face. So let's say, apart from COVID, what's a big challenge you've had to overcome?
Well, within Travel Curious, the last 2 years, we had a lot of background knowledge of what to do here. So it wasn't like we were a startup who was just starting and had no learnings. We had a lot of learnings and mistakes, and you have to have mistakes to be able to proceed. So we were able to leverage that to get a lot of momentum very quickly. So that's been great. I suppose some of the challenges is like, if you are working on a B2B2C level, you are not necessarily in complete charge of your own destiny. So you might have your own timelines, and you are desperate to get to those timelines. And if you're just doing pure B2C, that's all manageable, because you're in full control of your destiny. When you're working with very large partners who are essentially, massive cruise ships, not literally cruise ships, but I mean, as an analogy, so they have their own timetables, and often it doesn't match with yours. So it's quite frustrating sometimes, because you're trying to go live with them, and it can be deflating. It can be deflating, because you're like, we're supposed to be live now, supposed to get bookings. Yeah. So that's been a challenge, but I think it's worth it, because once you do get out to work with them, it is incredible to see how it can work. So that's kind of a challenge we've had.
And I'm curious to know how you cope with. So when I started in travel, it was with strategic partnerships, right, B2B. And, it was always very frustrating when my boss would say to me, "Hey, Whaley, you need more sales this month. What's going on?" And I'm like, well, I'm working with this partner and that partner, but there's only so much you can do. Whereas if you have your own sales team and you're responsible for revenue, you can get the sales team in, do some training, and inspirational stuff and whatnot. But when you're reliant on third parties to bring in the revenue, how do you cope with that?
I think you just have to have a lot of partners. So, if I was to tell you that we think we're going to have 1,000 partners in 3 years, that's the way you do it. And And it's about account management as well, which I'm sure you're very familiar with your background is, getting live is one thing. It's actually making it work is actually the real challenge.
Yeah.
And we're getting better at that because we have the knowledge of working with certain partners in the past that's worked, that hasn't worked. And it's also about getting commitment up front. It's like, how serious are you about this? Are you doing this because it's a trend to offer tours and activities? Or do you seriously want to do this? And we're getting a lot better now at identifying who is really serious and who isn't. One example. So a lot of the hotel companies have been talking about tours for a long time. Okay. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. And, some of them have done some integrations with the Get You Guide and Viators where they've just done a very simple kind of referral affiliate kind of thing. I'm sure you probably were part of some of those deals, but they never really took it a step further and they talked about it a lot. But we have actually, we met Marriott at Arrival, last year at the one in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
We were working already with some of their hotels. So that was a good start. And that is a team that was ready to just rock. They already had PlacePass in place, which is the company they invested in.
Yeah.
They had been working for years on it. They've been thinking that they have a team intern. So that's a partner now that can really do something, And then there's other partners who are very early in the stage. And they're the ones where it is a challenge and it can be deflating. But, there is a big pot for us all at the end. If you work at it, it does take a long time.
Yeah, it does. And I'm impressed with Marriott. They attend Arrival. They've interacted with Tourpreneur. They read our brief. I mean, out of all the hotel chains, they definitely seem to be the one that's taking tours and activities and experiences seriously.
Yeah, they are phenomenal to work with because they understand the challenges and they're actually dedicated. There's a dedicated team internally. There's not many hotel companies that actually have that.
Yeah. What's the best thing that's happened to you since you started Travel Curious?
Since we've started it, I would say the best thing that has happened was the beginning because, I have been in the space for a good few years. I left to go work for a few tech startups. I'm so passionate about the space. You can, as you know, it's very hard to leave this. It's very hard to imagine yourself not working in it. So I got my two co-founders, Amir and Nadav. And so suddenly there was a team of three of us who all have very different capabilities. That was very exciting because it's right, this is really possible because, we have the very senior CTO, we have the senior CEO kind of role, and we have me who is the CPO and business development, whatever it is. So suddenly you have all the different functions of what could be a highly successful company. So that was very exciting. And since then, it's just been head down, working away, trying to get things going. It's been stressful, but, we're just knocking every day, just building bricks. And hopefully the seeds that we sowed will start to come through now in the next couple of years. So there's no serious highlight, but I think the beginning, was probably the highlight just because we had a team and we were able to hire some great people around us. So that was very exciting.
How many employees do you have right now?
So we're currently about 11, and then we have a couple of kind of outsourced people as well. So we have a hybrid model where we try and, do a lot of content creation outsourced, research outsourced as well, which is the obvious way to do what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and that's not easy, is it? Finding professionals who can, create that content for you. I've had some experiences with that in the past.
It is so much harder than you think, isn't it?
Yeah.
I take my hat off to anybody that has pulled it off at scale because there's an awful lot of things you have to look out for, isn't there? And the quality. It's trying to keep the quality at scale is very difficult.
Definitely. Are you familiar with Sean Finelli at the Tour Guy?
Yes, I am. So Sean was running his company whenever I was in Rome.
Yeah.
I've never actually met him. I've been to his office before, but he wasn't in that day. I heard his interview with you, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, I know. It was great that he was so candid with us. His story just reminds me of you because you worked on Wall Street, right? And then you went to Italy and worked in tours. And he was the same. I think he was an analyst, wasn't he, on Wall Street as well?
Yeah, so I was doing an internship on Wall Street during an MBA. So, it wasn't the proper Wall Street, but I was still working in an asset management company.
For this Swansea boy, that's
Yeah,
good enough.
yeah, yeah,
You worked
yeah,
on Wall Street.
yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting that you were both working in finance and then found your passion in tours and activities, which I think is fair to say is not as lucrative in terms of salary and stock options and everything else. But it's that passion for the industry that we all have that with building our tour businesses. It's not always about that dollar amount.
No, I thought his story was very, very interesting, and I was laughing when he was saying that, because I was saying, God, if I ever get on Shane's show, it could be something similar, a story. But I ended up moving to Italy to work in a tech startup and fell into being a tour guide by complete fluke.
Really?
Yeah, it was such a fluke, because I was working in this tech startup, and a lot of my friends were tour guides in Rome, and I'd done history in university, I'd done a thesis about the Vatican, so I was like, I want to be a tour guide. So I became a tour guide kind of part-time. And, as any tour guide will tell you, it's an intoxicating job. It has some of the best job satisfaction, I think, in the world, because you're doing your passion, you're talking to people all day. People are genuinely very thankful afterwards of what they've done with you. So that's when I got hooked into the whole space. And that was actually a time where the guys in Get Your Guide were probably just starting. We put a few tours in Get Your Guide back then. And I remember thinking, God, this is all sewn up. This is all sewn up. That's it. And lo and behold, fast forward a few years, and the sector is, it's only going from strength to strength.
It really is. I've said this numerous times on the show, but it still amazes me when I walk past somewhere like the Empire State Building and I see a huge line of people just to buy a ticket, not to get in the place. And I'm like, you've got this on your phone. There's all these apps out there. You can have a coffee and book your tickets on your phone. Why are you standing in that queue for so long? And I'm sure that is changing. I'm sure people are, but there's still so much more education to be done about booking tours online.
Yeah, there's a lot of education. And also I think that there's a challenge that we all have with tours, which I'm sure you've come across with talking to the other kind of tourpreneurs you've had on, is that, driving a hotel booking, there's certain things you can do, because you have to have the hotel room. The tour, it is a nice to have. Everyone does them, but if they don't have the tour, they're still gonna be there and doing other stuff. And it's just trying to drive the need for them to book it there and then. And hopefully we can get there. But I think it's going to help us all if we can find a way to do that. Maybe around dynamic packaging or surge pricing of the guides at last minute, or something like that. If we can get to that stage, I think we'll all be much, much the better off.
And I'm curious to see what will happen as hopefully we get into recovery, although watching the news here, I'm not sure when that's going to be. But, I keep reading the stats that people are going to want to book private tours rather than go on a public tour. But of course, all that research, none of them put a dollar amount. And I really wish they would say, okay, do you want to go on a public tour? Do you go on a private tour? They're starting at $300 or £300, so that you can actually see. Because of course, everybody would say, yeah, I want the private tour, until they see the price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that will play out. If travelers will be like, yeah, I want to be ultra careful and ultra safe, so I'm going to book a private tour. And in terms for yourselves, how do you go about pricing your tours? Do you have an internal algorithm, or is it case by case? That's one of the toughest challenges, especially with the tours you're creating, because they're novel, right? They're unique. It's not you're taking one off the shelf and creating a similar walking tour as to what's already going on there. You're creating different experiences. So how do you go about pricing?
There's a scale how we approach this. Can we do this across 200 cities? The way we do it is, it's not really an algorithm, but we have a kind of a pricing calculator that's kind of systematic across all our tours. And we negotiate an hourly rate for the guides, depending on your license, or if you're a local guide. So we have hourly rates, and that feeds into the pricing. So that means so that's the first thing that goes in. And then we have our ticket cost, whatever it is, if it's transport as well. And then that allows us to be able to basically distribute jobs at scale to the guides, to their phones on one side. But, another thing that we have to try and do is kind of educate, the guides that, we want to bring them loads of business. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I have seen that doesn't seem to exist in the tour guide space, is the idea of net rates. It's like, look, we want to bring you loads of business, okay? But we have to share with an OTA or a tour operator or a hotel, and we don't want to make it too expensive, or no one gets any business. So the idea of going like, if we do all the work, we literally do all the work, and all you have to do is press a button and turn up on the day, can we get a better rate than what you are giving somewhere else? And it's starting to work. It's starting to work, but you have to offer that value to them in the first place. So so we've been pricing private tours for a long time, and it is very challenging, and it gets even more challenging whenever you are trying to get them into an OTA, because the OTAs always thought about the private tours last. So there's always group tour pricing. So it is a challenge, but I think we're starting to get there. And I think that this, COVID, has really brought private tours to the front, of the conversation. And all the OTAs have come running to us saying, can we have your tours quickly? Because we want to offer private tours. So, and they've actually adapted some of their systems for us as well. So that's another thing that's happening now as well. Which is quite exciting.
Yeah, because in my day at Get Your Guide, those private tours never sold. They just didn't sell. And it's interesting how that has turned around now.
Yeah, like the OTAs never really thought about how to sell them, because they just wanted to try and sell a lot of the tickets as well. So let's see what happens with that one.
But also it's a trust factor, because if I've spent, say, $30 for a walk-in tour in Berlin and it went really well, and then I go to that OTA next time and I'm like, oh, they have a private tour, it's $300. Oh, the last one went really well. I trust these guys, I'll book. But if you haven't had that experience and they're asking for $300, there's still that trust. There's still that fear. And especially with OTAs, and I guess you will suffer with this to some extent, is that the brand awareness is not there. In the same way that when I want to get on a hop-on, hop-off bus, before I worked in this industry, I didn't know the difference between city sightseeing and big bus, right? The two big players. It'd just be, well, which one's going to do the route? And in some cities, there was only one player. But you take somewhere like New York, there's 4 or 5 of them. I didn't really care, because you don't have that brand awareness. And I think that's the same. And I think it's getting better. I think the OTAs are doing a good job at it. And they have their various, like Get Your Guide Originals is a way of kind of hammering home that we are actually a brand that you should come back to. But it's a huge challenge, isn't it?
It is. And this is one of the reasons why we approach them differently. And so what we do at the OTAs is, we go and talk to them and we say, we'd love to work with you and get our tours in there, but what else can we do with you? So, and this is working because they're actually saying, so like, for example, we are launching branded tours for amusement in the UK next week. And, so we're going to be the partner for their branded ones. And that's very exciting because that's where you get the brand, because it's their brand. And we're also not just looking at private tours, we're also doing small group tours with them as well. So we will try and work with OTA and say, like, what can we do for you? Is there some stuff that you're missing? Is there some data that you have that you would like to kind of like test out a tour that can fulfill? And because we operate across so many cities, we have the technology and we're able to kind of create content and create tours. We are vertically integrated. All these OTAs want to be vertically integrated to a certain extent. So that's where we're actually getting some traction. So that's where I was saying that we're going a lot deeper with them at the moment.
So that's with Musement.
That's with Musement, yes, yeah.
Yeah, which is exciting with the booking news that they're going to be powering booking.
Very exciting. So we are, we think they're a fantastic partner as well. And they built some fantastic technology of how to work with partners like us, which has been great. The Italians are very creative, as you know. So this has been good. So like, I think you're going to see more of these originals, branded tours. I know you're not a massive fan, but I think that for the OTA point of view, they're thinking about a couple of things. They're thinking about customer experience and loyalty. They're also thinking about margins as well, because a lot of the OTAs don't make as much money as we think.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Those Google bills, they're pretty hefty.
Yeah.
Did you know every weekday Shane curates the most interesting news articles in tours and activities and sends them out in a snappy daily digest? Grab your copy of the Tourpreneur Daily Briefing at www.tourpreneur.com.
How do you stay up to date with the trends in our industry? Because as we all acknowledge, we're very fragmented. It's a very diverse industry. It's not like there is a Wall Street Journal for tours and activity. So how do you stay up to date with all the trends?
I'm sure the same as everybody else. So, I'm obviously on your email every day, which is a godsend.
Thank you.
I get it in the afternoons, which is obviously your mornings. At 2 o'clock, I think it is every day. So literally every day, religiously, I will open that straight away to see what's happening. I think Skift has been phenomenal. I know it's gone behind a paywall now. I can see why they're doing that. But, that's been fantastic. And, Focus Wire, obviously, and there used to be T News. I used to love T News. And I'll tell you, whenever I first wanted to build a tech platform for the tour space, I started to do some research. This is 5-6 years ago. And I came across T News. I was like, wow, this space, the travel space, it has its own kind of trade destination, press site, B2B. And then I was like, there's lots about tours and activities. Like, this is a brilliant resource. And then I remember finding an article by Alex Bainbridge, and it was basically a list of all the tour aggregators. Yeah. And there must have been 60 or 70 of them in there. And I was going, maybe more than 100 actually. I remember going, maybe I shouldn't do this. And it's quite funny now because, obviously I know Alex well, and it's such a small industry. I know a lot of people, and it's just amazing. And I encourage anybody that is coming into this space, if they think it's all sewn up, it's absolutely not at all. Like, there's so much opportunity still to go. So I would still just look at those. And I think LinkedIn has suddenly become so much more valuable for our space in the last couple of months. I now find LinkedIn, I saw Christian from Magpie just post a fantastic article there last week. It just seems like there's a lot more of a network effect kind of going on. Arrival are very good at connecting people as well.
Yeah.
So, I think there's plenty of people doing it, but obviously yours is the best because it's just all in one in email, which is fantastic.
And even I spend a few hours a day on curating the news and everything that's going on, but even I miss stuff. Like I was just reading a couple of weeks ago about a boat company who took 100 people out in Chicago despite the COVID restrictions, and now they're in serious trouble with the mayor. And you just think, wow, how did I miss that story? Because I curate it every day. But even it's so fragmented, there's so much going on that it's impossible to keep tabs with everything.
And for you, I suppose it must be challenging because, there is so much covered in this space. It's not like a tour is, a word, and it can be a lot of different things,
yes.
And it's growing as a segment. Like, there's all these new genres of stuff coming in. So you must have to follow a lot of different industries just to gather everything.
Which is great. I love it. And I'm soaking up all the knowledge, and I really enjoy it. I feel like I'm getting an MBA in this. I'm studying every day. Talking about learning, and before we wrap up here, are there any books that you recommend to fellow tourpreneurs that have helped you either with your mindset or productivity, building a business, anything that you're like, yeah, that book played a big part in our success?
Well, because my background was kind of in the tech startup side of things, I've read a lot of books around, building tech companies more than kind of operational travel companies, but it's the same. It's the same premise. And, stuff like the Lean Startup is a fantastic book by Eric Ries. And that can be applied across any business, even if it doesn't involve technology. And, the main premise of that is, experimenting, failing fast, learning, and putting the data back in. And that's something that everybody should be experimenting all the time, little things here and there, because, the theory and practice is very, very different. And I think in our sector especially, often what you think is going to work really well falls flat. And sometimes it's the random thing that you tried actually works out really well. And that book, I think, is very good for, it just gives you a system to be able to try and fail things very quickly. And then once you find the things that work, it's kind of double down on that thing that that works. Make that your own. And that's kind of what I would have done. But I haven't really read that many books. I'm much more into my podcasts and audiobooks these days. I can't get enough of them. I've been listening to podcasts for about 10 years and listen to your one as well. The GDR one is a brilliant one as well. It's gone quiet recently.
Season 2 coming soon.
Is there? Great.
Yeah. Season 2 is coming. Yeah. But it's one of those things that tourpreneur is taking all my time, which is great. I love it. Yeah. It's meant, as we all know, when we're building a business, sometimes our hobbies, we have to kick them into touch as we hunker down and build our businesses. So Great.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, it's great to have an hour with you. As is often the case with Tourpreneur, I have a boatload more questions we didn't get to, but that's always a great sign. And I would love to invite you back on the show for a future episode and maybe get you on for a roundtable and discuss what's happening in the industry and how things are going for Travel Curious.
Yeah, thanks so much, Shane. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and keep up the great work that you're doing, because I think you've helped everyone over the last couple of months with your messaging, and like everyone feels that you're out there for us, which is fantastic.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers, Shane.
Thanks for listening to the Tourpreneur podcast. Be sure to visit tourpreneur.com to join the conversation and access the show notes, including links to the resources mentioned on today's episode. This is Tourpreneur.